Yes, Your Honor.
For the record, the court did confer with Kylie along with her CASA and attorney on Monday. If everyone's ready, you may proceed.
The department calls Andrea Lewis. Miss Lewis, do you have any updates on where Kylie currently is right now?
Only thing I know is that she's in the Travis County area.
But you don't know specifics as to where she is right now.
Correct.
And am I correct that the department is not aware of where Kylie is residing?
Yes, that's correct.
And we don't know who she's residing with, correct?
Not at all, no.
Is it reported, though, ma'am, that she has been spending some time with another child who was previously in care?
That's what she stated, yes.
Okay. But beyond that, the department doesn't have any more information.
Correct.
And is the department concerned about Kylie's current situation?
Yes, ma'am.
And the fact that the department isn't really aware of where she is or who she's hanging out with?
Yes.
Okay. Does the department have any information to update the court on beyond what's in the report as it relates to Kylie?
No.
Okay. And ma'am, do you know if Kylie has her documents?
Well, Kylie had all of her documents when I visited with her on May 4th or 5th of this year.
And is the department able to keep in regular communication with Kylie?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any other updates that relates to Kylie at this time?
No, ma'am.
Is there anything else you feel the court needs to be made aware of?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Miss Milam?
You and I had texted on Monday after Kylie had conferred with the judge about the potential placement option of Safe Alliance in in Austin. Can you tell the court what you were able to find out about that placement?
Yeah, so I spoke with Ms. Sanchez with Safe Alliance. She had reported to me that there were no availability spots available for children to go to Safe Alliance. And that if something came, I guess, available, she would let us know, but that right now there's no availability.
Okay. And is it correct that there is not currently a CPU request open for a placement for Kylie?
Correct.
Is that, and I was a little surprised to hear that. Is that consistent with department policy when a child's on runaway status to not keep a CPU request open unless there is an indication, I guess, that the child would be willing to take a placement?
Yes, to my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
I'm sorry. Was your question, is that unusual or is that policy?
Is that policy?
Okay. And the policy is that if a child's on runaway, you don't have a CPD request in?
I was trying to confer with that policy, Judge, and I wasn't able to get a sure answer. And when CPU reached out, they asked was she still on runaway, and I said yes. So I'm just assuming that since she's on runaway, there's not a CPU request open, because if they get an opening and she doesn't want to go, I don't know how it really works.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ryan?
No questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Any further witnesses, Ms. West?
No further witnesses.
Ms. Milam?
No witnesses, Your Honor. I would ask if Kylie wants to address the court today, but if she doesn't, then I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
I'll circle back around to Kylie. Ms. Ryan, any witnesses?
I don't believe so. I know there's been issues with child support. And so I'm not sure if Ms. Milam and or the department have questions about that. But absent that, no, Your Honor.
All right. Kylie, is there anything you'd like to say before I have a couple of questions for you?
I would like to ask about my documents because I've stated several times that I do not have them, and my original birth certificate is in that. And the lady that has them does a lot of fraud, and she will go through and use them. And not only my name's on that, my dad's name's on it, my mom's name's on it. I think it's very severe. I get my original birth certificate back.
Okay. I think Ms. Lewis indicated that at some point you had your documents. Is that accurate? At some point you had your birth certificate?
Yes, I had it at her house. And after I left, I asked her to pick it up several times and she didn't. I told her that that lady does fraud and I don't want my documents there in case she uses my name for something, and she never wants to go pick it up.
So when you left, you didn't take your documents with you?
No, all I had was my ID, my social security number, and my Medicaid card, which is in my wallet.
So you have
The
those,
rest of the reports, my schoolwork and stuff, it's all in there.
but you have your social security and your ID.
Yes, I'm very concerned about my original birth certificate because that's hard to, can't really get another one of those.
You can get another one.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But my biggest concern is that lady, you already know who I'm with, Judge. I told you the other day. He actually is currently going to the same thing. Like someone stole his identity and that same lady had his stuff. So someone stole his identity and she had his stuff. So I'm very concerned with that now. I'm scared that she's going to use my stuff.
Have you made a police report?
I tried, but like they don't. Cause we called in and I was like, someone has my documents. They were like, I've asked for them back and they don't have it. And the cops like, oh, we're going to report, did report, nothing.
Okay.
And that was about a month ago.
The other day, there was also a discussion about family therapy with you and your mother, and that you are your own medical consenter and you'd like to get that set up. I know it's only been a couple of
Yes.
days, but there shouldn't be any problem with Kylie setting that up for her and her mother to go to family therapy, correct?
It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Kylie, if the department puts in a CPU request and they find a foster home, are you telling this court you will go to it?
I'm not saying I will go to it. I told you my concerns Monday, and if it means my concerns, I will.
Okay.
But you know how I am when it comes to where I'm placed.
Well, and I'm sure some people would say I'm pretty hard on the department, but I'm not going to make the department look for a placement if you're not going to take it.
My thing is I need a placement. I'm done with school. I'm done with my classes. All I need is my start test. I'm not going to go to a foster home or a group home. I need my own apartment. I am going to be 18 in 6 months. I'm going to be living on my own in 6 months. I don't need a foster home, a family. I don't want a family. I've had 2 families give up on me. I don't want another. I want my own apartment.
Okay. Anything further from CASA, Ms. Johnson?
Ma'am.
Okay. All right. The court has reviewed the report that's on file. I will continue the department as the permanent managing conservator. The court finds that Kylie is currently on runaway status, setting the next permanency after for November 1st, 2023 at 1:30. Let me double check if there's nothing further, not. If everyone's ready, Ms. Gungor, you may call your first witness.
The department calls Nadia Graves. Now, Miss Graves, you have recently been assigned to this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Will you be the worker moving forward?
Yes, I will.
The report details the multiple moves that Chrysasia has had since the final hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
Where is she at currently?
She is currently in a respite with Bluebonnet Trails.
And do we know how long she'll be able to stay there?
I'm not certain of the length of time in which she's allowed to stay.
What is the department doing to try and locate alternative placement for her?
Right now, we have an application in with Waco Center for Youth, and they're asking for a couple of documents that I have to collect. I spoke with Ms. Sterling about one of the documents that I need from her in order to proceed with Waco Center.
And what documents are they?
So from Ms. Sterling, I just need her tax return from last year. I need a copy of her Crystasia's most recent psychological and I believe psychiatric evaluation, as well as I need notes from her previous placement, and that's all I can remember right now off the top of my head. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Now, Chrysasia, to my knowledge, has been having some behavioral issues within the last few months. Is that correct?
That's what I was told of, yes.
Is Christasia receiving any type of medical treatment or anything at Bluebonnet Trails that's different from what she was getting previously?
I'm not certain of everything that she's receiving. To my understanding, she is receiving some type of therapeutic treatment. Medically, I have scheduled an update for her Texas Health Steps for July 25th. Is her next appointment. But I do need to complete a medication review for her. So I'm working on that within the next couple of days.
And then have you been able to keep Miss Sterling apprised of everything that's been going on with Christasia?
Not completely. I just got the case on Monday of last week. So I have pretty much been like an ostrich with my head in the ground trying to figure things out.
Has Miss Sterling reached out to you or anyone in the department asking for any information regarding Christasia, or has she reached out and stated, hey, I don't want my daughter to be in respite care, she can come back home, or anything like that?
So I spoke with her this morning, but we didn't talk about placement or anything to that respect. I did inform her of the information that I needed from her for Waco Center for Youth. And that was about it. Just a brief conversation, because I also need to meet with her to actually have an official introduction and find out some things from her as well.
Is there anything that's not listed in your report that you feel like the court needs to be made aware of at this time?
Not that I can think of.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Houston?
Just briefly, Your Honor, Ms. Graves, you're aware that Christasia has been in a couple places. I know that you're new coming on the case, but that there were some issues previously at CWAP that weren't 100% of Christasia's making, correct?
I know a little bit, but not full story.
Okay. So obviously, yeah, I don't want to ask you questions that you're not going to be able to answer because you're not fully versed on it, but you've at least been made aware that there were some issues involving things that had happened to Christasia while at CWAP, correct?
Correct.
And has she been doing better at Bluebonnet, the respite, than she had been previously doing at CWAP?
Yes.
And have you gotten a chance to kind of meet with her and visit with her already?
So I'm actually trying to work on sometime either tomorrow or Friday to come down and meet with her. I was talking with our clinical coordinator who wants to meet with her as well. So we'll both come and see her at the same time. So I know it's sometime this week that I'll be meeting with Christasia.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Sterling, do you have any questions for Ms. Graves? You're on mute, ma'am. There you go.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Anything further, Ms. Gongora?
No, Your Honor. I just asked the court to take judicial notice of the CASA report that's also on file.
The court will. Any witnesses, Ms. Houston?
Your Honor, I'm not going to call any witnesses today, but if Ms. Cooper had any update from the time when she filed the report, I would like her to have an opportunity to update the court.
Thank you. Ms. Sterling, is there any evidence you would like to present at this time?
No, sir. No, ma'am. Is there any evidence that I would like to present?
Yes. Is there anything you think I need to know?
No, all I want is what I was trying to tell you in previous times, that like all I want is for Christasia to get the help that she needs, and I couldn't accommodate her no matter what the situation was. I couldn't handle her, and it's out of my hands.
Is there anything that you think the department needs to be doing that it's not for us to help Christasia?
No, I feel like y'all getting the ball rolling now.
All right. Thank you. Christasia, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Cooper, I'll give you the last word.
There's nothing new on my part to add other than, Christasia has really been trying in this placement, and she felt very iffy about it at first, but she committed to it and she stayed, and she's been doing really well there so far.
So somebody help me out. I've always thought it as respite as like a weekend, or if a current placement needs a break. And so I'm glad that it seems to be so far so good. Is it possible, Ms. Graves, that this could be something more than respite if it continues to go well?
I would need to follow up with the treatment team. I'm not certain. I'm actually new to Bluebonnet Trails with Christasia. So there's some things that I need to find out a little bit more with in regards to it.
And
Okay.
Judge, it's my understanding in talking with Miss London, who's not available to testify today, but she let me know that Bluebonnet Trails will allow her to be there for at least 60 days, and then they do another evaluation at the end of those 60 days to see if they can potentially extend that time.
Okay, I learned something today. Thank you. And it may be, I'm guessing that that's not anywhere in Waco, Texas. Okay, I'm guessing, so Christasia and Miss Sterling, if the Waco Center for Youth turns out to be an option where Christasia, you could be back in Waco and it might allow mom and daughter to have more time. Do both of y'all think that would be worth looking into?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, keep it up, Christasia. Keep working hard. We're just going to all kind of keep rowing in the same direction, and hopefully we'll get you back to Waco and then maybe ease you when things are a little bit better back to mom. All right. If no one has anything further, the court has reviewed the report that's on file. I will continue the department as the permanent managing conservator. I will approve Christasia's current placement. I'll set the next permanency hearing for November 1st. Is set on the court's docket for a permanency after final. The department is present through Ms. Gongora. CASA is Elena's guardian ad litem. CASA is present through Jennifer Friedman, and also the new supervisor, Ms. Johnson. Also, we have the old not that you're old, the former supervisor, Mr. Mormon. Charles Levy is Elena's attorney. Sam Martinez is present with the mother, Kelly Davis. The father, Mark Ketry, is not present. If everyone's ready, Ms. Gongora, you may call your first witness.
The department calls Nadia Graves. All right. Miss Graves, have there been any updates since the filing of your court report?
Currently, Elena is home for a visit, but other than that, no, there's nothing else new going on.
So by all accounts, it appears that she's doing very well at this placement. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it looks like Elena's there with her mom right now. Does that look right?
Yes.
Has she been doing well on her visits with her family?
Yes.
Have there been any issues reported to the department, or any issues that the department has stumbled upon or had issues with reported by the placement upon her return?
No, I've spoken with Elena's grandmother, who Elena stays with while she's home. And grandma has had positive reports. Placement has also had positive reports upon return.
And so at this point, we're continuing to work on getting Elena back home, but we want to make sure that she finishes up treatment with the placement that she's at to make sure that it's a successful return home once we get there.
Correct.
And now, given Elena's age, she's also required to have an ID. Has the department been working diligently to make sure that she gets that?
So I spoke with mom, and I've also talked with Elena. With Elena being home at this time, that's one of the things she's supposed to get while she's home. Mom has her birth certificate and social security card.
Okay, and I think that I see mom and Elena shaking their heads, but it sounds like you're in contact with them and they're working on getting that, correct?
Correct.
Are we having any issues at this time with mom or with grandma or anything like that needs to be addressed today?
No, the only concern that the department has is mom had a positive hair follicle. That was the only concern that the department has right now.
And we're continuing to monitor that, correct?
Correct.
And obviously, mom understands that if she continues to test positive, that Elena is not going to be able to be returned home to her, correct?
That is correct.
Are there any other issues or updates?
No, that's it.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Martinez.
Mr. Graves, it's true though that the mother's passed every drug test that you've requested of her taking?
So she's passed every UA. There was 2 that she did miss. And I did do a hair follicle on June 6th, and she tested positive for that.
But the UA test, you're randomly calling her to go in and drug test. Is that correct?
No, she's actively on the color code system, so she has to call into our hotline.
Okay, so she but again, it's just random and she's been tested negative on those. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, as far as you kind of mentioned the idea that the child, you're working trying to get the child back home, you know what kind of time frame we're looking at?
So it's all up to mom having negative drug tests and maintaining sobriety, as well as Elena maintaining what she's doing in her placement as far as her positive steps. Placement has noticed a major change in Elena's moods and behavior. So if she keeps on the same path, we can look towards moving her home. But we also need mom to be negative.
Can I interject something? The report indicates that the goal is relative conservatorship. And so you keep talking about returning home, but the way I understood the report is that the goal was get conservatorship to grandma, but allow Elena to have time with mom.
Yes.
Is that still accurate?
Yes. Like right now, Elena is on level 3 at her placement. And if she continues to trend upwards, more than likely she'll be discharged sooner than later. So with mom having a positive hair follicle, we can't actively move Elena home to mom, but we do have grandma as another placement option for her. So we have to look at conservatorship as a placement option right now.
Now, go back to some more questions as far as the hair follicle. I mean, who is she taking to test with right now?
So she's been going to quality labs. It's Waco, but it's right off of Hewitt Drive. It's Hewitt Drive, and I want to say Imperial, right by Walmart.
Okay. Did she get her own private test if it follows the same criteria that she's that CPS requires? Identification, those types of things with the hair follicle.
Yes, she can.
Okay. All right. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Levy?
Thank you, Judge. And hopefully I'm not on mute. Sorry about the connection issues. Ma'am, it's true that the hair follicle test was positive for meth, but it was a pretty low level, wasn't it?
It was 1,000. Excuse me. I'm going to look at my court report because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
I want to say it was 1,492.
1,489. Close.
All right, that's pretty close. I mean, that's a pretty low number, isn't it?
I can't say yes or no to it because I'm not the drug liaison for the department.
And I appreciate that. The reason I'm asking is if mom is otherwise testing negative, and given the low level, it was something that happened 5 or 6 months ago. Why would that impede giving Elena the chance to be back with mom? I mean, obviously she's local, right?
Yes.
If mom fails another drug test, that's on mom, and Elena would need to understand that, correct?
Correct.
And so, I mean, I'm not advocating for sending somebody to an active meth user, to be clear, but, I mean, you don't have any reason to think she's doctoring up the UAs, do you?
I can't say because we did have 2 missed UAs. So with those 2 missed ones, I can't say if it would have been positive or negative as well.
Did she give you a reason for the missed UAs?
The one that we have for the 2nd of June was that I know Elena was home around that time. So, and I think Elena was going back to Houston at that time. So that could be a possibility. But
that's a legitimate excuse, not a let's try to dodge the test, right?
yes, but that was June. As far as April, I don't have an excuse on why she missed that.
All right.
Because usually there's communication with the 2 of us regarding if she can't test or what have you.
All right. And so, I mean, you would agree, and I'm not picking on you, but the best time to get a child home is so that they don't have their school year messed up and have to switch schools, right?
Yes.
Well, is there any reason if mom continues to test negative that Elena can't start off the school year? I appreciate the judge may not let her, but I mean, from CPS's perspective, I mean, that's only a month away.
So mom and grandma both live in the Hewitt area. So
right.
If Elena was to go to grandma, she would still start at Midway. And if she was to return to mom, she would maintain going to Midway as well.
All right. And so have you confirmed with grandma that she's open to giving Elena another chance?
I have not had a chance to confirm that yet.
All right. Well, I mean, not to take up too much of the court's time, but are we going to come back in a month so we can figure out how things are going? Or, I mean, the next hearing 6 months from now?
I'm not certain because also it also depends on discharge and the whole discharge planning from placement.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Elaine's been doing good for an extended period of time with one hiccup, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that's the kind of stuff that teenagers do. They make stupid decisions on occasion, right?
Absolutely.
And so, and I appreciate, I gave you kudos at the crossover meeting a week or so ago that, I think the department is working in the right direction. You would agree, right?
Yes.
But my comment would be, we don't want, you understand Elena needs some kind of motivation to show her that, what she's doing is being recognized, and, she keeps earning additional chances. And I think that's the way it works, right?
Yes. Can I add
Go ahead.
something?
Sure.
Elena did tell me that she did want to move home to her grandmother's home. So that's the other thing that we were looking at. But again, we have the option of changing directions. Should we have a better upswing with a negative test from Mrs. Davis?
All right. And again, where I'm coming from is, how do we get from where we're at now? I'm sure Mr. Martinez be interested in that also, to where Elena is a month from now. So we're not having some kind of emergency hearing and trying to get before the judge.
I'm gonna set a hearing for Wednesday, August 16th. It's right before school starts. So if y'all worked out placement that Elena's back either at home or grandma's, we'll pass the hearing. If we need a hearing, I'm gonna already have one set. According to the Midway School District 2023-2024 calendar, the first day of school is August 22nd. That's a Tuesday.
Thank you, Judge. Is that virtual? Yeah.
Yes, that's a PMC thing.
That's all. Thank you.
Anything further of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Any further witnesses, Ms. Gongora?
No, Judge.
Mr. Martinez?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Mr. Levy?
No, Judge, unless Elena would like to address the court.
I'll come back to you, Elena. First of all, you look really good. You look like you're doing a million times better than the last time I saw you.
Thank you.
Does CASA have anything to chime in before I go back to Elena? Oh, I think I heard you say no, but you're on mute, Ms. Friedman.
Joined by phone. No, Your Honor, thank you for asking. I don't have anything.
All right. Okay. Elena, it sounds like all the reports are, I know you didn't want to go to this place, but it sounds like there's been some really, really huge progress.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about yourself?
I've had a way better mindset than before, and I'm really happy about it. And I want to keep striving for more, if that makes sense.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am. I really am.
You have every reason to be proud of yourself. And so you've been having the visits, and I'll tell you, I was kind of skeptical at first of the visits, and you know what? You have proven me wrong, or proven that my reservations were probably unfounded. At some point, Mr. Levy said you're really growing up. And so just keep it up, the good work. We want you to be where you want to be. We want you to be happy and have all the support that you need. So keep it up.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right. The court has reviewed the progress. The court has reviewed the permanency report that's on file. I will continue the department as the permanent managing conservator at this time. I am approving Elena's current placement. I am approving the continued visits. And it sounds like you guys have been able to, as Elena makes progress and as mom keeps testing negative, y'all are reaching agreements for longer visits. Is that pretty much right?
That is correct, Judge.
I'm not going to interfere with y'all's work behind the scenes. I am going to set this, like I said, on August 16th. That's coming right up to the wire before school starts. So if y'all work it out between now and that day, and everyone's in agreement that Elena's going to be placed back, either with mom or grandma, then just let me know and I'll scratch this hearing and no one will have to come back on 8/16. I'm just putting that as a fallback. I'm going to put it at 1:30. Is there anything further from anyone? Ms. Graves?
Do I need to prepare a report or is it just a step?
No. The only reason for this is that if there's any question about whether Elena should go back with mom or grandma and start school in Midway, or if there's an argument or someone believes that she needs to stay where she is, that's the only issue that's going to be had. So if everything keeps going well, I really kind of anticipate that y'all will agree that she should start the school year at Midway, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Elena?
I wanted to ask, so yesterday was 4th of July, and this is regarding my state ID. Yesterday was 4th of July. I were to assume that I wouldn't have been able to get my ID yesterday, or like at least to apply for it.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And Monday, my mom had a doctor's appointment in Temple, and my grandmother had to drive her. And, I had to go with them, and they dilated my mother's eyes. So that's the reason my grandmother drove, is because on the way back, my mom wouldn't be able to see well enough to drive herself. And, today we have court. And I mean, that I don't really know the hours that well of state IDs and such, but I wanted to request tomorrow. I have circle of support, and I kind of have like a schedule, and Friday's the only free day, if that makes sense, without any specific. Well, actually, it was planned to like go back to Houston, but I wanted to request to stay until Saturday so I could have a longer, like a more at least a day chance to apply for an ID, because I've given you my reasons on why I haven't been able to go and get mine because of the schedule.
So you're asking to increase the visit by 1 day?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Graves, what's the department's position?
So initially we were fine with her staying until Saturday. Grandma asked for a Friday, but if grandma's fine with her going back on Saturday, the department's fine with it as well.
Okay. Costa, do y'all have any input one way or the other?
No, Your Honor, Saturday would be agreeable.
All right. So is grandma the one transporting?
Yes.
Okay. So if grandma says it's okay, then I think it's okay. But if for some reason with grandma's schedule it needs to be Friday, then I'm gonna honor her request since it's a long trip. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So for going to get your ID, if you don't have an already scheduled appointment, you have to get there before 10 o'clock for the walk-ins, especially you being a first-time ID person. So try to get there as early as you can so you can do a walk-in. And then if all the documents that you need, call me and I'll let you know which ones that you need to bring with you. You may also need a form from me, so you don't have to pay for it as well.
Okay.
Why don't we do this, Ms. Graves? Why don't I pop you and Elena into a breakout room? And if you have a do you have a second to go over, since we're right here at the same time right now?
Yes.
Let's do that so that hopefully, I mean, maybe they can even make a phone call to try to get an appointment so that they know, or at least know whatever they need to know. I think that you're probably on top of it all. Okay, so the hearing is in recess. I'm going to open a breakout room and invite Elena and Nadia Graves into the breakout room. Does Casa want to be part of it?
Your Honor, please.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and put y'all in. Once you're done discussing, then if you'll just go ahead and hit leave the meeting, and then that way you don't jump back into the middle of the courtroom. Okay, this is on the court's docket for permanency after final. The department is present through Ms. Gongora. Charles Levy is the child's attorney ad litem. Costa is the guardian ad litem. Costa is present through Ms. Sonia Cooper. Both parents, Jamie Kindred and Nicholas Kindred, are also present. If everyone's ready, you may call your first witness.
The department calls Marjorie Scythe. Do you have any updates for the court since the filing of your report?
I did have a chance to visit with Jaden. He's doing well. He did have a visit with his parents, and he said it went well.
Is that after the May visit, or is that the May visit?
That was after the May visit.
And given that there was a recent visit, did you receive any calls or emails or anything from the parents about any issues they experienced with Jaden on his visit home?
No, they did not. They actually visited him at the facility and took him out for a day trip, and they had a good time.
Okay. And so Jaden was moved to an RTC that's a little bit closer to Waco, so that way hopefully he and his parents can have more frequent visits. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he's been doing well in that placement, as you stated?
Yes, he is.
what are the current goals that the RTC has that he is working towards?
He's working on his behavior. He's working on being able to control his behavior and just basically self-control.
Okay. Have there been any issues reported to you by placement that are concerning or that the court needs to be made aware of?
The only thing that they did say was they changed his medication. Instead of giving it to him at 4 p.m., they give it to him at 8 p.m. to help him calm down.
And so there have not been any issues reported to you?
No, ma'am.
Have there been any issues or concerns brought to the department's attention by the parents and in a way that they maybe are looking for more assistance from the department?
Not that I know of since I've taken over the case.
Were there any issues beforehand that you're aware of?
Yes.
What were those?
Those were just, the pickup and drop off times, asking the department to help with the transportation.
And has that issue been resolved?
It has.
Is there anything else that you feel the need to make the court aware of at this time?
No, I don't.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Levy?
Thank you, Judge. In talking to Jaden and in talking to the new case manager at the facility, they both led me to believe that family therapy isn't really taking place, that I think the last session was more than a month ago. Would that be your understanding?
I think so. That's what I was told.
Okay, well, what can we do to, let me ask you a question. Do you know why it's not taking place? Because there's a 0% chance, in my opinion, this child ever goes home, which is what he wants, without family therapy.
Right. I mean, I know that they are working on that.
When you say working on it, how hard is it to make an appointment?
I know that they were supposed to do appointments once a month in person and then virtual appointments weekly.
Okay, well, none of that's happening, is it?
Not that I know of.
All right. So again, my question is, what are we going to do?
1 second. Mr. Kindred, I know you have something to say. I know that Mr. Levy wasn't able to see you. We'll come back to you when it's your turn. Either that Mr. Levy may call you as a witness or I'll allow you to testify, okay? Cool. I think we're all wanting to hear what's been going on with that. Go ahead, Mr. Levy.
Well, I'll hold my questions subject to recall. So maybe Mr. Kindred's going to tell me something different than what Jaden did and what the case manager did.
All right. Mr. Kindred, do you have any questions of Ms. Scythe at this point?
No, ma'am. We just met with her a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Ms. Kindred, do you have any questions of Ms. Scythe?
No, ma'am.
All right. Your next witness, Ms. Kangora?
I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
Mr. Levy?
I'm going to call Mr. Kindred, although I only see half of him.
Go ahead, Mr. Levy.
Thank you. And first of all, Judge, if the court will allow me, the Kindreds had reached out to me. It was during personal issues that the court's very well familiar with, and so I did not get back in touch with them in a timely manner. Mr. Kindred, correct what I just said if you can, or just tell everybody what's happening with family therapy.
Family therapy is taking place. We meet every other week virtually with Jaden and his therapist. Deidre, not sure what Deidre's last name is, but she works for the facility, and that's been going on for several months now. So every 2 weeks, usually it's like Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, we meet for about an hour virtually and discuss issues. When we were there, 2 weeks ago, we did family therapy in person with Jaden and his therapist and our entire family. So yes, family therapy is definitely taking place. I'm not sure where the confusion happened on that.
Well, and let me say this, it's not confusion because your son doesn't think he's ever met me, which is a bit ridiculous. But having said that, you have not had the opportunity to talk to the new case manager yet, have you?
I don't think we have, just email.
Okay, because I will represent to you that in talking to her, I asked her to make sure she made contact with y'all.
Okay.
Do you think family therapy is helping?
Yes, I definitely think it's helping. I think, I think it's something we're going to have to continue working through. But yes, it's helping.
All right. Any home visit planned or?
Right now we're on vacation. As soon as we get back next week, we will set up one.
We'll probably do one in July with him.
Okay, because you understand that when I ask him what he'd like to see happen down the road, his only thing is to go home.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, have y'all discussed in family therapy that that's not happening like tomorrow or next week or next month?
1 second. Miss Kindred, right now your husband's on the witness stand and it's really confusing and not the way court works for other folks to chime in. I know that this is sort of an informal setting, but if you'll let Mr. Kindred answer these questions, and then if you have anything else to add, I'll give you that opportunity. Go ahead, Mr. Levy.
Yeah, I mean, kids function well with some kind of hope. Does he have any realistic idea that he's not coming home anytime soon?
For a visit? No, we've
No, to live with y'all. That's what he wants.
Yeah, I think he has hope that, and I think we have hope that we will achieve that goal.
Okay. And let me say this: I'm not picking on you. I think we have always gotten along well. What I'm asking is soon. I understand that's the goal, but when you talk, does he understand you're not going to be here when school starts? You may not be here by Christmas, that kind of stuff, so that he's not just kind of in limbo because all he wants to talk about is going home.
Yeah. Yes, I think we've expressed to him that that this may be a long road, and that and we haven't given. I don't think we've given him any assurance that he's going to be home by school starts. No.
No. To be clear, he didn't say that. I'm just asking. I'll try to do this in the form of a question. You understand? It's not going to be helpful to him for me to say, "Hey, Jaden, you can't go home because your parents don't want you home right now," right? I mean, that ain't going to help him. You get that, right?
Correct.
And I can't say, and you're probably not going home in the next month or 2 or 3. But so I'm asking you, don't you think as his parents that it would be helpful for you to help set his expectations, which might give him something to work on behavior wise?
Yeah, I think we do that in therapy.
Okay. Because my understanding from talking to the case manager was that the only issues he's having is he gets aggravated with his peers, and he frankly doesn't really want to be around his peers, is what I pick up on that. Is that your understanding?
He hasn't expressed that to us.
Okay, because I'm not aware of him having any other issues other than being aggravated with his peers. At least that's what the case manager tells me. Are you hearing anything else?
No, we haven't had reports of anything else. No.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Gongora, any questions of Mr. Kindred? Any further questions? Any further witnesses, Mr. Levy?
Only to the extent that Ms. Kindred may want to say something. I'll just sort of expedite that.
Thank you. Ms. Kindred, do you have anything to add to your husband's testimony?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cooper, anything from CASA?
I will just say that, when Derek and I talked, he stated that when he first drafted his report very early, several months ago, he wrote a very different report than what we ended up submitting, because in the past couple of months, to put it in his words, he feels like both Jaden and the Kindreds have kind of turned a corner, that Jaden has a renewed commitment to really working on controlling his behavior. The Kindreds have a renewed commitment to really working on the family therapy and bringing him home and figuring out how they all function together. And so it was a pleasant surprise to read that in his report and know that things have taken a positive turn.
Awesome. Kindreds, is there anything else that you believe needs to happen to facilitate Jaden continuing to do well?
No, ma'am, I can't think of anything.
All right. And it sounds like y'all have been working out whether y'all are going and then taking him for the day, or there's a home visit. Y'all been working through all those by agreement?
Yes,
all right. Keep on doing that, and as they continue to go well, increase them as y'all agree. Otherwise, the court has reviewed the report that's on file. I will continue the department as the permanent managing conservator. I will approve Jaden's current placement. I'm setting the next permanency after final for a permanency after final. The department is present through Ms. Gongora. Charles Levy is the attorney and guardian ad litem for Karina. Heather Seymour is the mother. She is not present. You may proceed.
The department calls Monique Johnson. Do you have any updates for the court since the filing of your report?
Yes, ma'am. We found that Karina, we're having trouble getting her old school records because we've been trying to get her DID put in place. So I'm working with the educational specialist and the disability specialist to try to get her DID back in place. Other than that, that's about all. Oh, I'm sorry. And we're looking for a new placement because Karina is not making progress at the current facility. So we're trying to find her more help.
We just lost Mr. Levy.
Now, Ms. Johnson, you said that you're working on getting you're working with education to get those few documents needed. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else that's specifically needed in order for her DID to be in place?
She's already had the appointment with the Harris Center to get those records. We're just hoping that we could do it fast because she'll be 18 next year, and we don't want her to be without a home because of her developmental delays.
What's the alternative if that stuff isn't in place by then? Because I believe you have about 6 months.
If it's not in place, we fear that Karina will be on her own, and she can't function on her own.
And you said that you're looking for alternative placement for her currently?
Yes, ma'am. Due to the facility not helping, she seems like she has regressed a lot by being in this placement. She continues to get in trouble, continues to have verbal altercations with staff and peers, and sometimes it gets physical.
And do you have an idea of what placements you're looking into?
So far, we are looking to RTCs and therapeutic foster homes.
And do you know about how long it will take for the department to hear back from any of those placement options?
CPU is helping me. We're hoping that we'll get something in the next few weeks.
Is there anything else that you feel the need to let the court know at this time?
I'm going down on Monday. Let me get the exact date because we have to get her ID. So I'm going down the 17th of July so we could get her ID. She has her birth certificate and social. We just need the ID.
Thank you. And Judge, I have Mr. Levy on my phone now.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Levy.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, when I was talking to this young lady, it seemed to me that she might have been heavily sedated. Have you had the same feeling?
I haven't spoke to her today. I spoke to her yesterday and she was up and cheerful. I'm not sure if she didn't sleep at all but I most likely will talk to her today like around 4.
Just let me know your thoughts. I actually asked if she had been asleep because when I was talking to her, I asked if there were any relatives she wanted to be in touch with, and she said no, and that I found unusual.
Well, she doesn't really have many relatives. Her adoptive placement, her adoptive grandmother is elderly, and so there's really no other options.
I was thinking, well, I mean, the grandmother who's what I was thinking of on that. So, because her mom really isn't in touch at all, is she?
We speak monthly and weekly, depending on if Karina is in trouble. I make sure I update her on what's going on with Karina. Unfortunately, she stated that she cannot be a placement due to the other children in the home. Most of the children.
What I was thinking of is more regular contact or any contact or just being a mom, even if she can't go live there.
Oh, yes, ma'am. She speaks with Karina weekly as long as Karina isn't upset, because usually sometimes Karina doesn't want to talk to her.
All right, then maybe that's the vibe I'm getting from Karina. Okay, I appreciate that clarification.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I have a note from a previous hearing that we were looking into HCS slots. Is that still an option?
Yes, it is. What happened was when we did the HCS to try to get that slot open, they noticed that the DID was not in place. And so we had to go back and get her reevaluated. And that's why we needed help with the Social Security specialist and everyone.
And have you gone to the Department of Aging and Disability to look at for them to file a guardianship for this young lady who cannot live on her own?
Yes, the specialist, Miss Noble, she's helping me with that process as well.
So they are going forward with a determination of whether this young lady needs a guardianship, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything further from anyone?
No, Your Honor.
Just so y'all know, this is a case in which if this young lady does not have a guardianship by the time she turns 18, I am going to extend my jurisdiction so that we don't put her on the street. All right. The court has reviewed the report that's on file. I will continue the department as the permanent managing conservator. I will approve her current placement. I'll set the next permanency after for December 6th, 2023 at 1:30. Continuation of the hearing we started this morning on the intervener, Mr. and Ms. Gray's request for placement of the two younger children, the boys. We took a break and Ms. Houston had Ms. Gray on the witness stand. So Ms. Gray, if you'll unmute yourself, you are still under oath. Let me go ahead and the department's present through Ms. West, CASA's present through Ms. Cooper. I will watch for your advocate. Robin Houston is the attorney ad litem for Braley. Katie Casper is the attorney ad litem for the two younger boys. Mr. Kinslow is present for the mother, Rhiannon Hill. Two fathers, John Hill, Albert Hernandez Jr. are not present. The Grays are present with their attorney of record, Ms. Kay. All right. Ms.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Houston, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gray, you had testified earlier about the situation where your granddaughter Rhiannon was in the home unexpectedly, correct?
Right.
And I had kind of a follow-up question after the testimony just to get some clarification. You said that when you found out that she was there, you told her to leave, right?
Yeah, after that, I did.
Okay, but then you testified when somebody else was asking a couple of questions that the situation with Braley finding drugs and drug paraphernalia in the purse happened while you were in a bedroom and while your granddaughter Rhiannon was still there, correct?
Right.
Okay, so what I'm trying to ask is, it doesn't sound like even after you told her to leave that she left right away, correct?
Well, she was in the process of dressing whenever we got there. And then she came and talked to her PO. And after she talked to her PO, I told her and her friends they needed to leave. I said, you cannot be out here and you won't be out here. Leave.
Okay. And then my follow-up question is, you mentioned that this was Braley's birthday when this was all going on, correct?
Right.
And at some point, your daughter, Miss Waters, was bringing a cake over there, correct?
Right.
And she also, at some point, was also at the house, right?
She what?
She was also at your house at some point during that day, correct?
Yes, she brought the cake over, and that was, we got out there too early, and I'm glad that we did because we had some things go missing that we didn't find out about until later.
Okay. And I think this is asked, and I apologize for asking it again, but I wasn't sure about the answer. You didn't call the police about the extra people that were at the house, correct?
No.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
I just told them to leave.
Ms. Kay, anything further of this witness?
Yes, ma'am. Now that we're not so pressed for time, I have a few things. Ms. Gray, how are the visits going with the boys?
The visits have gone very well up until this past Monday. I was really kind of afraid on the last one 2 weeks ago that they were going to come in there and tell us to calm it down because we had gotten both of the boys remote control cars. And of course, a 2-year-old can't do the remote, but Papa can. And that baby took off chasing that car, and it was like, how fast can I run? And it was so cute, and they were so giggling, and having so much fun. I thought, they're going to come in here and tell us we're going to have to be quiet.
Okay. And would you say that the boys are very bonded to you and your husband?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How old let me just start with John. How old was John when he came to live with you and your husband?
Rhea had a C-section. She was living there at the house. And when 2 weeks after he was born, her husband, the kid's father, wanted her to go to work so that when he got out of safety, he would have some money. He wouldn't be broke. So she got a job, and I got the baby at 2 weeks, and it was off to the races.
So he's been with you ever since?
He's been there ever since.
Okay. And you had expressed some concerns about John not receiving therapy anymore?
Well, I wondered about it because they had taken him from the home, and I wondered, John is very slow at expressing his feelings. I mean, he will eventually talk about things, but it takes a while to get there with him. The counselor that he was seeing, he had seen for a year and a half, nearly 2 years. And I thought, now, why would they stop the counseling if that's the only counseling he's getting?
And that was something that you had set up for him with the school when he was living with you?
Right. He had gone to a counselor right after who they call their stepdaddy died in that car wreck. And I got them both into counseling because it was so traumatic to both of them. And
let me pause, to Braylee and John, it was traumatic.
John,
okay.
That I got them into counseling, and you know, they may not be licensed, but the kids had established a rapport with her and would talk and visit with her about what they needed to do and how they could change certain behavior.
Okay. And you said that this person was not licensed. Was it a school counselor?
It was a school counselor.
Okay. And so now he's in this foster home and he's not receiving any counseling. Are you aware of him being on any medication now?
He told me that he was taking medicine for ADHD now. And I asked him about it. I said, well, what doctor gave you that? Oh, you know, da, 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 da. I said, well, does it make you feel better? Do you feel like you're doing better with it? And he didn't know.
And he's never been on ADHD meds before when he was with you?
Nobody ever said anything about it. You know, they send this little test home from the doctor's office, and you fill out one and their teacher fills out one, and you take that back to the doctor, and from those 2 questionnaires, the doctor decides whether or not they need medicine.
Okay. So for all of these boys' lives, who has been the person to take them to the pediatrician when they were sick or needed a checkup?
Basically, it's been me and their papa.
Okay. And who is the person to enroll them in school or daycare or make sure they got what they needed for that?
That was us.
And who's the person that has bought them the right size clothes and shoes and all of those things?
That was us.
Okay. Who's the person that tucks them in at night and kisses them?
Can you say that again?
Who's the person that tucks them in at night and kisses them and sings to them?
Oh, I thought maybe you had a secret and you knew about our morning singing. We wake them up with good morning to you, and it sang like happy birthday. And I remember a couple of days before Jay left, I was singing it to him to wake up and catch the bus, and he reached that arm out of that cover and grabbed my neck, and I'm going, now I'm so glad I have that memory.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. West.
Ma'am, you stated a moment ago when Ms. Houston was questioning you that you did not call law enforcement when you saw those individuals in your residence, correct?
Right.
And then you stated that you noticed after those individuals left your residence that there were things missing from your home. Is that right?
Well, let me tell you what happened. Can I expand on this?
Ma'am, you can just yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Are those items that you recognize still missing?
Well, that's why I wanted to expand on it. It was a check. One of our checks out of our checkbook was taken to the bank. It had her name on it to payee, but nobody signed it. And of course, our bank caught it.
Okay. And so when you said her name, are you referring to Rhiannon's name?
No, Ruby Hill.
Ruby Hill's name was on the check.
Ruby Hill. Their father's sister.
Okay. Once you noticed that instance, did you call law enforcement then?
No, because they had the bank was quick enough to realize something's wrong here, and they called us immediately. So she didn't actually get anything other than she stole the check, and I don't know what else she could.
Okay, but you didn't notify law enforcement after she stole a check?
No, I did not.
Have you had any further contact with Ruby Hill?
No.
And ma'am, I want to go back to this birthday party you said you were having for Braylee. And I think you earlier testified that Rhonda was going to bring over a cake for the party. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. did Rhonda stay for the party and sing happy birthday?
Yes, she did.
Okay. So Rhonda was there at the party with Braley?
Yes, she, as soon as she brought the cake in, we lit the candle, sang happy birthday, and Rhonda left.
Beyond that, has there been any more contact between Rhonda and Braley to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow,
No questions.
Ms. Casper,
No questions.
Ms. Houston.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Your next witness, Ms. Kay,
We rest.
Ms. West,
The department calls Valentina Espinosa. And what is your role within the department?
I'm an investigator for the Department of Family Protective Services.
And ma'am, specifically as it relates to this case, how are you involved?
I was investigator throughout the whole case for Rhiannon Hill.
And ma'am, I'm guessing that you are familiar with the circumstances that led to the children's removal, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And ma'am, you heard the testimony earlier today while we were in person, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And ma'am, when you received this case, am I correct that you were the one responsible for determining what determination this investigation should receive?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the final disposition on that investigation?
The final disposition was for reason to believe for neglectful supervision for Mr. Gray, Roger Gray, and Patricia Gray.
And ma'am, I'm guessing there were some investigations and some conversations that took place and ultimately for the department to reach that disposition, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And generally speaking, what all did you do in your investigation for this case?
I met with the family face-to-face, and I also met with Braley face-to-face.
And when you say you met with the family face-to-face, who specifically are you referring to?
I met with Miss Patricia Gray, with Roger Gray, Rhonda Waters, and Rhiannon Hill, and Brady.
And did you meet with these individuals all together at once or over separate periods of time?
It was separate periods of time.
Okay. And ma'am, when did you meet with the Grays?
I met with Patricia Gray on May 1st.
And did you meet with Miss Gray alone?
Yes. I met with her and with the CVS worker as well that had the case.
Is that Garrica Harris?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you met with Miss Gray multiple times during your investigation or just once on May 1st?
It was multiple times.
And ma'am, am I correct in that the department has concerns that relates to the Gray's protectiveness of these children?
Yes, ma'am.
And why does the department have those concerns, you specifically?
When I first met with Miss Patricia Gray on May 1st, the conversation that we had, the facts that were given to me were not factual, and just the lack of protectiveness that we had throughout the case on her reports.
Ma'am, you said that the facts that were given to you were not factual. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So the stories that we got from them provided by the family, which is Patricia and Roger, did not match, and as well for Miss Rhiannon Hill.
Okay, so there were inconsistencies in the stories provided by Roger and Patricia Gray and Rhiannon Hill?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I correct in that one of the inconsistencies is that Rhiannon Hill does not have a key to the Gray's residence?
Yes.
And did Miss Gray tell you that Rhiannon did not have a key to the residence?
Yes.
And then did Rhiannon tell you she did have a key?
Yeah, she admitted that she does have a key.
And did she say that the key was how she entered the Gray's residence on that day?
Yes, she stated that she has a key and she entered through from the front door of the home.
Okay. Were there other inconsistencies that led to some concerns for the department?
So the other consistency that we had, it was just how she got in through the house. Miss Gray told me something and then Miss Rhiannon told me something else, so that did not match what we had in facts. And that Rhonda was not in the home the day of the birthday party.
Is it your understanding that Miss Waters was in the home for the birthday party?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so the department's concern is due to the inconsistencies of the Grays, Rhiannon, and were there inconsistencies with Miss Waters?
Miss Waters did tell me that she was the one that also went to drop off Braley to the institution that she was taken to Arlington.
Okay. Do you have any other concerns you feel the court needs to be made aware of?
No.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow,
No questions.
Ms. Casper,
No questions.
Ms. Houston,
No questions.
Ms. Kay.
Did you place Braylee with my clients?
No.
You were the investigator though, right?
Yes, but throughout this case, not the prior case.
Well, which case? Which case? Do we have two cases now?
Well, I was assigned to the one for these concerns. I did not place Braylee with her grandparents.
Okay. But you knew that she was placed with my clients, right?
Yes.
You didn't remove her from that placement, did you?
No.
Okay. You said you're concerned about a lack of protectiveness with my clients. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you found them reason to believe for neglectful supervision?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do they hurt these kids?
No, they did not.
Do they beat these kids?
No, ma'am.
Was there food in the refrigerator? I mean, as far as you know, Braylee was being fed, she was being dressed, she was being sent to school, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they on drugs?
Ms. Patricia tested negative throughout my investigation.
Okay. They have criminal history?
No.
Okay. Now, you said that you talked to my client, you talked to Rhiannon Hill, and you talked to Miss Waters. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And their stories don't match.
No, ma'am.
And so that gives you concerns about my clients.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got two active drug users who broke into someone's home and robbed them. And then we have my clients, right?
Yes.
And the inconsistencies in their stories make you think that my client is the one that's not telling the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Pass the witness.
Ms. West,
I have no further questions.
Mr. Kinslow,
No question.
Ms. Casper,
Ms. Espinoza, just so I'm clear, your investigation had to do with the multiple times that Braylee was getting out of the hotel room when they were at the hotel. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it was not the initial removal. It was the subsequent investigations when the grandparents were living in the hotel with Braylee.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Houston,
Just to follow up on what Ms. Casper was asking, when you were investigating the situation with the hotel, did you find out that Braylee was being allowed to wander multiple hotels unsupervised?
I was aware of one incident, yes.
What was that incident?
I was aware that she had run away from the hotel.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Kay, anything further of this witness?
Sir, are you saying that my clients are neglectful because Braylee ran away?
No, ma'am.
Okay, because you know Braylee ran away from CPS custody a few weeks ago, right?
Not sure about that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, ma'am.
You didn't know that she's run away from multiple placements since she's been out of my client's home?
I was aware of one case, yes, that I had.
Because she left the place at 4 a.m., right? And she was running the streets in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, if that's a problem for a foster home, you don't think it's a problem for the department?
She was not under, she was under our care, but she was placed in an RTC.
Okay.
She had somebody else watching her, yes.
Okay. I'll pass it, Ms. Judge.
Anyone have anything further of Ms. Espinosa? May she be excused.
You may.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Your next witness, Ms. Webb.
The department calls Garrica Harris. And am I correct that you are the CVS caseworker on this case?
Yes, I am.
Ma'am, I'm just going to ask you a straightforward question. Is the department in agreement or supportive of the boys being placed with the Grays?
No, not at this time.
Okay. And why is the department not in agreement with the boys being placed with the Grays?
The department is currently not in agreement with this due to the disposition that was concluded with the investigation, and also not just the lack of protectiveness, but if we're thinking of long-term placement for these boys, Andreas is only 1. And so if you just say in 9 years, when he's 10, the great grandparents will be in their 90s. And I don't think that that is really feasible for children of this age.
But to be clear, Ms. Harris, the department's not in agreement with the placement just because the Grays are older individuals, correct?
Correct.
The department has other concerns that would prevent the Grays from being able to meet all the boys' needs, correct?
Correct.
And am I correct in that the department's concerns relating to protectiveness stem from the reports the department's received about the Grays allowing Ms. Waters or Ms. Hill access to the children?
Correct.
And you've heard the testimony that has been put forth today here on Zoom and in person, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware of any other incidences in which the Grays have allowed either Miss Waters or Miss Hill contact with the boys?
There was an incident that I received a report from the one of the hotels that they stayed in, stating that Mrs. Hill actually.
Objection hearsay.
Your response?
I talked to the hotel.
Objection.
Ms. Harris, I'm asking your attorney for a response.
Your Honor, I'll rephrase the question.
All right.
Ms. Harris, are you aware of any other incidents? I know you referred to the hotel incident, but have there been reports of the Grays allowing Miss Waters or Miss Hill contact with the children beyond what's already been brought to the court's attention today?
No.
Okay. And you were referring to the hotel incident, and is that when Braley was placed with the Grays?
Yes.
Okay. And ma'am, has the department had any issues with communication with the Grays?
No.
Okay. And ma'am, does the department have any concerns about the care that these boys are receiving in their current placements?
No.
And am I correct, ma'am, that these current placements are facilitating sibling contact between each of the boys?
Yes, they are.
And have there been any concerns reported with that sibling contact?
No.
And ma'am, you heard a moment ago that the Grays have been having some visits with the boys, correct?
Yes.
Have there been any concerns with those visits the Grays have been having with the boys?
No. The only concern that was brought forward was when my HST supervisor, and he does provide notes, and I was reading the notes, that he just had to intervene once the Grays kind of started telling the boys that they would be home soon, and they're working really hard to get the boys home. But that was the only concern that has been reported.
And why would that be a concern for the department?
We just don't want to give the children any false hope because we don't know what's going to happen or we don't know if they're going home, when they're going home. So I just don't think it was appropriate to let the boys, to continue to tell them that during the visit.
And was that brought to the Grays' attention?
I just read it. It was a visit from Monday, and we were off yesterday.
Okay. Does the department have any other concerns that relates to the Grays' protectiveness?
No.
Do you have any other information you feel the court needs to be made aware of?
No.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow?
No question.
Ms. Casper?
Thank you. Ms. Harris, you had filed an amended court report on May 12th. Is that correct? And that was for the status hearing?
Correct.
And in that report, you detailed very thoroughly, I believe on pages 10 through 16, all of these different incidents that the department was having to investigate regarding Braley at the hotel, Braley getting out, and things of that nature. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Judge, I just asked the court to take judicial notice of that court report that was filed for the status hearing.
Report failed.
Ms. Harris, John is placed with a woman by the name of Fallon Braintner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is her relation to John?
She was a long-term sub when he was in the first grade, but now she is an interventionist. I don't know if I'm
interventionist,
correct, but yes, at his school that he's currently enrolled in.
Okay, and so she was actually his long-term sub when his stepfather passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so she and the two of them kind of bonded over him grieving and just developed a close relationship. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then this past school year, she actually was, I believe, doing his reading and math intervention for the entire first grade year. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, and then he's been placed with her now for about 3 months. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware of any academic concerns that have been brought to the department's attention regarding John?
Yes.
Okay, and specifically, what are those?
I was able to participate in an ARD meeting for John back in May. And I was told then that they had been trying to get special education testing for John for quite some time, but could not get anyone to come to the school to actually sign those consents for the testing to begin. Since he was placed, he has now been tested and has been placed in special education classes.
Okay. And I believe he's been getting 4 days of help per week in math and reading. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe he's actually been diagnosed with dyslexia. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And he's actually having to do summer school, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I believe they're enrolling him in a Jump Start program at the end of the summer to help him get prepared for second grade as well.
Yes.
And they're also doing private tutoring with him, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Is he in counseling?
He is in counseling.
Okay. And With respect to the ADHD, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, John actually did receive a psychological exam and also a CANS assessment, which both did send a referral over to his pediatrician for ADHD testing. So a recommendation from his psychological, from his CANS, and also his pediatrician before ADHD medication was prescribed to John. And it just started June 28th was the day that he was prescribed the ADHD medication. So he hadn't been on it long enough to really.
And it's my understanding that this is a non-stimulant that he's taking at night. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain what kind of concerning behaviors John had when he first came into care and was placed with the Brantners?
It was reported that John was really not necessarily hyperactive, but he was very busy. In the doctor's office, he was jumping up and down in the chairs, hitting on the walls. When they would go out to eat, he would kind of stand up in the booths of the tables, and he would make like weird animal noises, just for no reason, bang the windows. So those were the behaviors that were reported by the caregiver of John.
And so they've just kind of worked with him on, what's appropriate in public and how to kind of act and behave in public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Additionally, were there concerns about him just leaving the home and walking down the street 3 houses down without permission?
Right. It was reported that he really didn't know boundaries or respect boundaries. He would just leave. If he wanted to go outside, he would go outside and wouldn't really ask, can I go ride my bike, or can I go play with the neighbors? Kind of just come and go at free will.
Okay. And how has that changed since he's been with them?
I was able to observe myself several reminders. There are like little sticky notes on the door asking like, hey, did you ask permission to do this? Have you asked permission to go outside? Did you ask permission to ride your bike? They're on the front doors, on the lights.
A lot of the issues were just a matter of trying to keep John safe. Is that correct?
Correct.
And he's now learned to ask permission and think before he wanders off or runs in a parking lot and things of that nature. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, with respect to some medical issues, he actually had surgery today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was that for?
It was a constructive surgery on his eye.
Okay. And this is actually a surgery that has been recommended several times before. Is that right?
That's correct.
And now that he's in care, we're able to get this taken care of. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are there any other medical concerns that have been noted?
The only other concern was a broken arm, and there were a few missed follow-up visits. I want to say it was in 2021, according to the medical records that I received.
You just got out. You said according to them, there were a couple of missed follow-up visits. Is that right?
After he broke his arm.
Okay. And surgery was also recommended. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that didn't happen?
No.
Okay. Is John bonded to the Brantners?
He is.
Okay. Is he happy there?
Yes.
And he wants to stay there, doesn't he?
He does.
He loves his family very much, but he wants to stay with the Brantners, doesn't he?
He has told me that, yes.
Okay. And the Brantners and then AJ's placement have both gotten together outside of CPS intervention or involvement so that the boys can see each other. Is that right?
They have.
Okay. And AJ's got a birthday coming up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that placement is willing to invite grandparents to the birthday. They want them to be involved with AJ, don't they?
That's correct.
And the Brantners do as well.
Yes.
All right. I'll pass the witness.
Houston.
Ms. Harris, you detailed many of the concerns with supervision of Braley in your last court report, correct?
Correct.
And at this time, is the department recommending that Braley be returned to the Grays?
Not at this time.
And why is that?
We do believe that Braley is in need of a very intensive therapeutic environment to better address the behaviors that Braley is exhibiting.
Is there anything else that the court needs to know that wasn't contained in the previous report regarding my client?
No.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Kay.
How long did you leave Braley in the placement with my clients?
She was removed on May 6th when she was taken to the psychiatric facility.
And when was she placed there?
March 27th, whenever the investigation decided to remove the children.
Okay. And you said May 6th is when she was removed, when she was taken to the psychiatric hospital, right?
Yes.
Who took her to the hospital?
The hospital and the Grays.
Okay. So it's not that you decided that there was a problem and she needed to be pulled, right? They took her to the psych hospital because the CPS couldn't get her into an RTC.
They took her because the police told them to take her.
Okay,
to
but
the
you
hospital.
had been told that she needed to be in an RTC since the adversary hearing, hadn't you?
Yes.
I'm sorry, was that a yes? You broke up just a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, but you weren't able to get that done for Braley, were you?
No.
Even though you sit here today and tell the court that that's what she needs, and you knew that that was what she needed, right?
Yes.
Where is Braley now?
In CWAP.
She's in CWAP. Was she in an RTC for a little while?
Yes, she was.
And what happened?
She was discharged
She was discharged. Why?
due to her behaviors.
What kind of behaviors?
She did threaten to kill all the staff there at the placement, and she also ran away the day before and taken to juvenile for leaving the facility.
Oh, she ran away.
You said, how did she run away?
No, I said, oh, she ran away. Okay. The boys are still placed separate, right? We know that. What's the department's long-term permanency plan for these boys?
As of right now, the goal is reunification with their mother.
But I'm sure you have a secondary goal.
The concurrent goal, is conservatorship or adoption.
Conservatorship or adoption by whom?
Fictive kin, relative.
Which is it?
Fictive kin.
Fictive kin. Okay, but only one of the boys is in a fictive kin placement, right?
Right.
The other's in a straight foster home.
Correct.
So how are we going to advance towards this goal of a fictive kin adoption for the baby?
It was discussed previously with one of the caregivers, if there is any intent or possibility that they could be placed together.
And
it was discussed previously, and they would want John to become more comfortable and to get his medical diagnosis squared away and get him stable before we were to move Andreas into the home.
okay, so as of today, they're not willing to have Andreas in their home.
At this very moment, not at this time.
Okay. And we don't really know if they'll ever want to have him in the home, do we?
I don't know.
We don't know. Okay. And so, I mean, as we sit here today, the facts are that these boys are in separate homes, and long-term, it's not likely that mom's going to get either one of them back. So they're going to go into the system and be separated, right?
Yes.
Have you been out to my client's house?
I have.
Is the house itself like physically appropriate?
Physically, yes.
Okay. I mean, it's a safe home, right?
Yes.
There's food in the fridge. Yes.
Yes.
Did the boys have their own rooms set up?
They share a room and a bed.
They share a room and a bed?
Yes.
When's the last time you went out there?
I just went out there last week.
How many bedrooms are in the home?
I was only able to observe 2, one for Braley and one for the boys.
Okay. But there's no structural concerns or anything like that in the home?
No.
And was anybody else at the house when you went out there?
Yes. Mrs. Gray said it was her husband's brother was there. And I think someone that was cleaning the pool or something.
Cleaning the pool. Okay. Did you see any signs that anybody else was living in the home?
Again, I only observed 2 rooms. So the 2 rooms that I went into were just empty rooms for the children.
But I mean, you had to walk through the rest of the house to get back to the bedrooms, right?
I walked through the living room, and the first room was Braley's, and the room next to that was the boys'. So I did not walk through the home.
Okay. And just briefly, you had mentioned before that John is receiving some educational intervention services. Is that right?
That's correct.
If he's placed with my clients, is the department going to be able to make sure he still gets the services that he needs?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Anything further of this witness, Ms. West?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Ma'am, am I correct? The department's been working to try to make sure Braley receives the care that she needs for the entirety of this case?
Yes.
And so just for the fact that an RTC has not been located for Braley at this point doesn't mean the department's not been trying to find one.
That is correct.
Am I correct, ma'am, that there is a CPU request in for Braley?
That is correct.
And have there been any hits on that CPU request?
No, they have not.
Ma'am, you stated that you were only able to observe 2 rooms in the home of the Grays.
Yes.
Is there a reason why you were only able to observe 2 rooms?
I had only come to the house to get a few clothing items for Brayley, and she wanted to show me the rooms that she had set up for the children. So those were the only rooms that I saw. I didn't ask to see any other rooms.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow,
No question.
Ms. Casper.
Just briefly, Ms. Harris, the visits that the boys have with the grandparents, and I'm not saying that this is a concern, but what is the dynamic between the boys and the grandparents as far as how they interact?
There is a very apparent bond between the boys and their grandparents, mainly Mr. Gray. John does speak highly of his great grandfather. They are very happy to see them. Andres is very happy when he sees grandma and grandpa coming into the visitation room. But they usually bring food for the boys. They'll play and they'll eat. Mrs. Gray does bring food at every visit for them. But they'll sit there and the boys will run around and play, and then they'll come and Mrs. Gray will play in their hair, and then they'll run off again and come back. So that's just.
So is it fair to say that they kind of sit back and watch, and maybe due to their age, they're not as interactive as maybe other people would be at a visit with the children?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
But it's clear they love them. They all love each other, and they clearly are bonded.
Yes.
All right. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Houston.
Just briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Harris, have they had contact with Brayley while she's been at the RTC and then at CWAP?
Yes.
And how's that contact gone?
As far as I know, that it is going well. Brayley, I talked to Brayley. I talked to her earlier today. She said she talks to her grandparents. She talked to them quite often when she was at the RTC, and she's has access to a phone at CWAP, so she's able to call whenever Brayley wants to.
And she also appears to be bonded to them and wants to have a connection with them, correct?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Kay, anything further of this witness?
No, ma'am.
Your next witness, Ms. West.
I have no further witnesses.
Any witnesses, Mr. Kinslow?
I have no witnesses.
Ms. Casper.
I'll briefly call Fallon Brantner. You are the current placement for John, is that correct?
Correct.
And first, he had surgery this morning, is that right?
He did. We literally just pulled in the driveway.
Okay, how's he doing?
He is settled, still super sleepy, but has done fantastically.
Okay, great. I know you want to get back to him, so I don't want to take up a bunch of your time, but how long have you known John?
Almost 2 years now.
Okay.
About a year and a half, a little bit over.
Okay, and your initial relationship with him was as a substitute in his class, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and can you just kind of explain kind of why you took an interest in this child?
Well, like you said, I was a substitute for had COVID, and during that time, his stepfather passed away, and so initially bonded over trauma just a little bit, and then I took on a permanent position at the school, so I saw him a lot. I wondered about him. Then it became like a prayer in our family, like just making sure that he was okay. And then that following year, I was his intervention teacher for both reading and math, and got to know him quite well. And it just feels God-led. I know that might sound silly, but
what concerns were you? Why were you concerned about John?
Initially, it was just that trauma and then the grief. But then I noticed that he became increasingly like unkept looking, same clothes over the course of, 2 separate school years. And that's not a big deal, but then they were like too small and maybe off season. And he seemed more like distant, not engaging with his peers or in class as much. Just kind of like a negative trajectory from the little boy that I had initially met.
Okay. And he's been placed with you for about 3 months now. Is that correct?
Correct.
And when he first came to you, what were some of the concerning behaviors that he had?
It was very, at least in my opinion, it was very apparent that he was not accustomed to boundaries or just general safety rules, as far as like he would exit the home without anyone knowing, or would that was really the biggest safety concern for me, is that he wasn't running away, but he would go outside, or he would think that he could take his bike out of the garage and like visit the neighborhood, and that was a major one of just having him be aware of the proper ways to keep himself safe and the expectations as far as like asking for permission and all of those things.
Okay. And you've been able to get his art in place and all the accommodations. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And are you familiar with how long the school had been trying to do that for John?
I do not have the specific date. I could probably go and find it on his initial paperwork, but they had been trying, for at least 3 months, mid-year, first grade. I think there were some conversations with both mom and the Grays to come up and sign the paperwork to get the testing started, and that never happened. So when he was placed with me, I was able to do that within the first couple days and
okay.
Get the services.
How is John doing in your home now?
Good. He's smiling a lot more. He's really becoming more receptive to age appropriate behaviors in general. Playing with peers his age, learning how to play with peers his age. He's learning how to like engage in a conversation that's not a confrontational or combative, in a non-confrontational way. For a majority of the time that he has been with me, it very much felt like attention-seeking behaviors that were very habits. They were a habit. So instead of just like asking a question, if he wanted to engage in a conversation, it was like an argument, like you're wrong. Or so learning how to like properly engage with people. His eating habits are improving. He's eating like a well-balanced diet now. At first, it was like very much chips and raiding the pantry for the snacky foods because he didn't want to eat like meats and veggies. And I think that's kind of age appropriate, but whatever. And then very aware of how to keep himself safe now. And very proud that he is learning like how to keep himself safe, how to engage with friends. And so I think self-esteem has improved a lot too.
Okay. And with respect to his relationship with his grandparents, how does he feel about them? Great grandparents.
Speculation, Your Honor.
You can answer it if you know.
He does not speak about Mrs. Gray often. I do know that Mr. Gray is important to John. He speaks about Mr. Gray quite often. And most of the time when he does, it's like, just for example, like the other day, there was something wrong with one of our vehicles and it was very aware. He was like, well, my grandpa, and like he would talk about all the things that his grandfather had taught him about cars. Or we drive by the subway in Hewitt, and he's like, that's one of my grandfather's favorite places. But he also, and he talks about missing him, but he also, on the flip side of that, just the visitation the other day, I think I know that they were brought McDonald's as a treat, and he made the comment, I really like that my grandfather McDonald's I drink forgets a lot of things.
1 second.
So,
you broke up and I heard I really like it. You broke up.
Can you hear me?
Well, you broke up right after you said I really like it that my grandpa and then
brought me McDonald's. And then he said, but he forgot my drink, and he forgets a lot of things. So also says things like that.
And so, and you encourage those conversations. You want him to have open dialogue about his family. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And you want him to have a relationship with his grandparents. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And in fact, you actually ran into his grandmother, Miss Waters, recently. Is that right?
Correct. It was several weeks ago, but yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you let him say hi, you introduced yourself, and y'all moved on. Is that right?
Correct.
If the court orders that John stay with you, are you willing to work with the Grays so that they can continue to see John?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And then also you have gotten together on your own with AJ's placement. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Houston,
Your Honor, I have no questions for this witness.
Ms. Kay.
Do you have other children in your home?
I do.
Okay, how many other kids?
I have a 7-year-old daughter who lives in the home. She's in John's grade. And then I have a 16-year-old daughter that also lives in the home.
Okay, and they're your bio kids, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he's your only foster?
Yes, ma'am.
Is he your first foster?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you ever call CPS to report any of the concerns that you talked about today?
No, I did not. I did not have that initial contact role. I believe that the school did over time contact CPS.
So all these things that you were talking about seeing in him that you thought were concerning the clothes or whatever, that he seemed sad, you never felt like you needed to call CPS and report those things as child abuse or neglect?
So at the school, and the counselor does.
It's just yes or no, ma'am. I just want to know yes or no if you ever called it into CPS.
No.
Okay. You said a little while ago that you felt like this was God-led. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay. What is it that you feel like God is leading you to do for John?
At the beginning, we just prayed for him to overcome the grief that he was obviously having for the stepfather. And then over time, that prayer more or less turned into, if he ever needed a safe space, that we would be willing to be that person.
Okay. And so now that you're doing that, do you feel like that call has been answered, or do you feel like there's more that God is calling you to do for John?
I feel like we're providing him with a safe place.
Okay. But do you feel like God is calling you to adopt him?
That is a possibility if it is a need.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. West,
I have no questions.
Mr. Kinslow,
No question.
anything further, Ms. Casper,
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Houston?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any further witnesses, Ms. Casper?
No, Your Honor.
Any witnesses, Ms. Houston?
No, Your Honor.
I will ask for argument, and then I'm going to give CASA the last word regarding their recommendations based on the arguments made. Ms. Kay?
Judge, the law says the court shall place with family if it's safe. And the department's policy also says they have to place with family if it's safe. And there are good reasons for that. If you look, science and psychology and everything tells us that the most significant long-term relationship in most people's lives is the sibling relationship. And there's a reason for that because, caregivers, grandparents, parents, whatever, we all pass on. But the longest lifelong relationship most people are going to have is with their siblings. And when you talk to people that grow up in the foster care system, whether they're children or they're adults that have aged out, if they came in with a sibling and they lost a sibling, one of the most significant traumas and pains that a lot of them will speak on is the loss of their sibling. And the thing that really creates a sibling bond is the lifetime of shared experiences that you have with that person that you have shared that household with. It's the stories of, remember how mom used to collect pumpkins, or grandma always made that oyster stuffing at Thanksgiving, or it's the shared jokes. And when children are separated, they don't have that. And I think in this situation, we are really looking at realistically long-term. These kids are going to be in the foster system. I don't think it's likely that any parent is going to complete services and get custody back. And as we sit here today, these kids are all split up, and I think Braylee's future in the foster system looks complicated and bleak. And one of the children, John, has potential adoptive placement, but the baby has been in 2 foster homes since being removed. And we don't know what his future holds, likely in at least one more move. And here my clients sit. They raised these children. They have a home for them. Their home is safe. It's cleaned up. They have a place for them. And this is the place that these boys have lived in for their entire lives. And nobody here can say anything about my clients being abusive. They don't do drugs. They don't have a criminal history. They've never hurt these children. And so I just don't see how the department can overcome the law and their own policy to keep these children in separate foster homes when they could be together with family. And I understand that they have concerns, and I have advocated, as an ad litem, as a parent's attorney, as an attorney for the department, against family placements before. But in this particular case, I don't think that we have that situation. The protectiveness concerns, if the court has concerns about them being protective, they're a party. They voluntarily subjected themselves to the power of this court when they filed in, and the court is free to put whatever injunctions or rules or guidelines in place that are necessary, to allay whatever the department's concerns may be, so that these boys can be together in their home with their family the way that they should be. So I'm asking the court to place them with their family today.
Thank you. Ms. West?
Your Honor, the department is asking for these children to remain in their current placements. Ms. K stated that if family is safe, then the boys should be placed there. However, we're in this case and in this situation because these children were not safe with the Grays due to the Grays allowing Ms. Hill and Ms. Waters to continue to have access to these children while they were actively using methamphetamines. Your Honor, throughout the last couple of months, we've had circumstances in which the Grays have allowed either the mother or Ms. Waters to be around the children, whether that be at a birthday party where they're singing happy birthday or not calling law enforcement when Ms. Hill allegedly broke into their home. Your Honor, the department has concerns relating to the protectiveness of these individuals, Mr. and Mrs. Gray, as they've not demonstrated any level of protectiveness moving forward since their removal. And Ms. K noted the importance of a sibling relationship. And Your Honor, today we're not asking for the severance or the discontinuation of that sibling relationship. As you just heard that John's caregiver is willing to continue to facilitate a relationship between the siblings and has been doing so thus far. Your Honor, these boys need stability. And at this point, they've been through enough and they're stable each in their respective placements and still have that sibling relationship. So the department believes it's in these boys' best interest for them to remain where they're currently placed.
Thank you. Mr. Kinslow.
I represent Brianna Hill, and I'm not sure that her position has a lot of influence on the court, but she does support the relative placement. It seems to me like there haven't been any safety concerns addressed at that placement where the children have been most all their lives. And if there are safety concerns, those concerns have been reasonably addressed, and we would encourage the placement with the intervener.
Thank you. Ms. Casper.
Your Honor, on behalf of my clients, first, John, he wants to stay where he is. He's happy, he's thriving. He loves his grandparents, he loves his family, but I think he's really getting to be a child for the first time. And he wants to stay where he is. Obviously, AJ is a young child, but I think the fact that these placements can facilitate visits is wonderful. And, we're not done trying to place these siblings together. That I realize that that's a concern, but I don't think that that door has been closed on these brothers yet. The reality is that I don't think the Grays can keep these children safe. I think they want to. I think they've tried really hard, but they just can't. And quite honest, they shouldn't have to. It's not their job to parent these children, and they've picked up the slack for a really long time. But at this point, I think they need to just be grandparents that get visits with their grandkids, and these grandkids are stable. They're doing well. And like I said, John wants to stay where he is.
Thank you. Ms. Houston.
Your Honor, my client is Braylee. She's not really under consideration today for being placed back with the Grays. She, of course, would like to be reunited with family, but it's probably not possible currently. I think that the Grays have been tasked with something rather monumental in my client's case because she needs some interventions that are, I think, really beyond the capacity of her great-grandparents as well as the rest of her family. So I have some concerns about her getting also sibling access and sibling visits and family visits, but nobody's really asking for her to be placed back with the Grays today. If they were asking for her to be placed back with the Grays, I believe CASA would have to address that because my client's express wishes would be to be back with family.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Tanya, Ms. Cooper, which one of you wants to speak for CASA?
I definitely have my 2 cents worth, but I'd like to give Evan the opportunity to speak.
I got to spend some time on Monday with the family at the visit, and my observations are the same that we've seen. I mean, I strongly support family unity, but in this particular situation, just from what I know and what I've seen, I agree with what Katie was saying, what Ms. Casper was saying, that the role and the conversation that we're having today is with great grandparents, and great grandparents are not full-time parents. And I would fully support exactly what we're talking about with them continuing in that role as a great grandparent and the children being where they are. That's just from my perspective, where they are today with custody and where they sit. So.
Ms. Cooper, and then I'm going to give Ms. Kay the last word.
Yes, ma'am. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself that I think the Grays have a very fitting last name, because I don't want them to feel like we're coming here today making everything very black and white, that they're the bad guys and we're fighting for good and this and that. Things are rarely black and white. Things are mostly gray in the work that we do. And it's obvious that the Grays love their grandchildren. It's obvious that they want to do what's right for them. But I think that they are also pulled in another direction by their daughter and their granddaughter. And sometimes it's really hard to separate love, family relationships, and boundaries. And we've already seen that order broken on the part of the Grays. So regardless of what could be ordered today to try to protect the kids in their care, there's no real guarantee that that's going to be followed through on, given that it's already fallen through once before. So CASA is going to stand by the recommendation that the children remain where they are.
Any last word, Ms. Kay?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to offer some words that everybody else just spoke. They love these kids. These kids love them. They're very bonded. They want to do what's right. They try to keep them safe, and their home is safe. What are we doing here, y'all? This is a family placement. And for everybody to sit here and say they're grandparents and they need to step back and know their role, they're family. Children should be with their family. And there's absolutely no reason why these children cannot be with their family. And my God, I wish every foster child in the system had family that would fight for them the way the Grays have fought for these kids. They have come to every hearing. They have been in these children's lives, advocating for them, getting them to school, getting them the help and the education and the counseling services that they need for their whole entire lives. And for the department to sit here and say, well, we just don't know, we're not sure, we don't think, and they're too old. How is that in the best interest of these children? If there is a safe, appropriate family placement, then they should be placed in that placement. I don't understand what the breakdown is here. It's clearly in the best interest of the children to be together with their family in their safe home. And that's what we're asking the court to do today. And frankly, we're going to ask the court to do that at every single hearing from now until these children age out, because despite what everybody else here seems to think, my clients are not just going to get tired and go away. They're committed to these children no matter what. And these children ought to be home with them. And that's what we're asking for, Judge.
Thank you. At this time, the court will deny the intervener's request for the change in placement. I will order that the Grays will get phone calls. It's my understanding that that should be no issue to work out more consistent phone calls. Also, the visits previously ordered will continue. And if the placements work out additional visits with the Grays, that can be approved. I am ordering so that it's very clear.